Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of No Reserve, Hagerty's podcast about the enthusiast car market. Now, we're here to help you make sense of the market, whether you're buying, selling, or just watching. Okay, $51 million. That's what a Ferrari just sold for. It's the second highest price paid for a car at an auction. In this episode, we'll bring you all the background behind that huge sale, plus a whole host of cars that the rest of us can afford. I'm Larry Webster, editor of Hagerty Media, and I'm joined by Dave Kinney, the publisher of the Hagerty Price Guide. Between the two of us, we've got decades of experience buying, selling, and driving the cars we love. Plus, we don't just guess at the values, we're backed up by the data of the Hagerty valuation tools. Okay, Dave, let's just jump right into it. There was a really interesting car that was for sale, and I just want you to tell the audience it was a Lamborghini. Tell us a little bit more about it, because you've been sort of watching this closer than I have.
Yeah, I really have been paying attention to this a lot. This is a car that was on Bonhams that was for sale in Abu Dhabi for the Grand Prix sale. And it's a Lamborghini Countach 25th anniversary edition. The interesting thing is, well, number one, the car's a wreck. It was actually the car that was wrecked in the movie. And number two, it was reported as sold by some media outlets, but it actually was never sold. And I think there's a story there.
Yeah, can we back up for a second? This is super interesting in the auction world, and just sort of like where reality is suspended, right? Okay, The Wolf of Wall Street, awesome movie, right? The book was incredible. That was a Martin Scorsese film with Leonardo DiCaprio, super hysterical, right?
Yeah, and he was the wolf, man. He was hungry like the wolf. Sorry, I had.
So Leonardo, his character crashes this famously. He's so high on drugs, he crashes this white Countach, and their estimate was, I thought, crazy high. It was $1.5 to $2 million. When, according to the price guide, a really nice 25th anniversary Countach is under $1 million, right?
Yeah, but this is a couple things going for it. Number one, it's the iconic colors for a 25th anniversary Countach. Right now, I believe
white on white.
The white is iconic, whereas the red was the one that you saw most of the time back in the day.
Sure.
But I think the white, because of the whole Miami Vice connection with a white Testarossa, which we will be talking about later, has kind of become the iconic, 80s cocaine fueled crazy market. Yeah. So,
but
okay.
This one, you fix it to drive it, and you've killed its value. I mean, I guess I understand the appeal to this car as a ornament, as a display item. Oh yeah, this was a car that was crashed in the movie. Ha ha ha. But I'm just baffled why they would expect that to trade, multiple times higher than a fully functioning car. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a star of a movie. So, but here's the whole thing, and we talked about this before. Fame is fleeting, and the people who saw Wolf of Wall Street, now the only time you're going to see it is on Netflix or something like that. It's no longer as important. The whole genre of the kind of 80s excess and the kind of scams coming out of Wall Street, although they go on, the 1980s version.
What are you talking about, Dave?
I have no idea what we take those words out. Nobody would ever think that there'd be anybody in for themselves.
Wall Street's still on the up and up, Dave. You know that. Please.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for that reminder. Anyhow, it's kind of a moment in time. It would be great as a museum display, but kind of only for people, let's just say 40 years or over right now that remember the movie. So, it's interesting in that way. But then again, the 40-year-old people are the people that seem to have the disposable income to go to museums and buy Lamborghini Countaches like this. So it's really interesting that it was reported as sold.
Wait. Could we just stop there? Oh, so there's two things. The first thing was, okay, I guess in Abu Dhabi where this auction was, right? There's money like just 4 inches deep all over the sidewalks, right? So that does make sense that they would ask this extraordinary amount for a crash car, and that's one thing. But then the second thing, after the auction ended, you're saying there was some reporting, and explain the reporting that you saw.
So okay, it looks like the source on this was ESPN F1. Their Formula One channel, and they saw it as, or they called it as sold. Well, if you've been to a Bonhams auction or almost any auction, you know that they hit the hammer after the car is done, but that doesn't mean that the car was necessarily sold. The thing you listen for next at a bottom auction, generally speaking, is "Thank you, sir," or "That goes to paddle number 73," or something
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, or "Going to a great collection," things like that. But there was none of that after this sale. And so
Oh.
if they were not real familiar with how auctions worked, and I'm sure that's what it was, somebody was there, reported it as sold, and then another media outlet got on it and recorded it as sold. But if you go to the source material, the Bonham's website, you can see that it's still for sale, and it's still asking $1.5 to $2 million. So, the car didn't sell. I don't know what's going to happen to it, whether it goes back to the owner or Bonham's is going to put it in another sale. Sometimes that happens, but it's interesting because a lot of times with cars like this that are very, very special, the old timers and myself included in that group would tell you that sometimes on some cars, your first bite at the apple is the best bite at the apple. So the second time it goes up for sale, it might not reach that 1.35 that it was reported sold at. And that was probably just the high bid of 1.35.
Okay, so you're explaining a nuance to a live auction.
Sure.
Okay, and so if you're there and you're watching and you hear the hammer, you're like, well, that means sold, but it doesn't, right? There's all these little tricks that are done to sort of amplify the showmanship of an auction. Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
Well, do you want to go to an auction and watch 16 cars in a row fail? I mean, I've done.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, is that what it is?
I think that's part of it. I think it's part of the patter that you hear at an auction. Thank you so much for bringing the car is a lot different than thank you so much for buying. So, there's all kinds of things you have to look for, but ultimately you should always check the website of the auction company and see if they report it as sold, because that's a lot more reliable. And then there's also other sources like Hagerty tracks the auctions. You can go and see, if Hagerty reported it as sold, for example. So, it's just a little trick, but here's the monkey wrench in the whole thing, or the should I say the adjustable spanner?
Another one?
Yeah, since I'm here in England, I'll call it the spanner in the works instead of the monkey wrench. The second Wolf of Wall Street car, also...
There's another one?
Yes, also a white Lamborghini Countach 25th Anniversary Edition. There are some minor differences. You'd have to look to find them, but they are there. Is being offered for sale currently and is going up for sale in another auction from another auction house with a sale date of December 8th. Now, we're not quite at December 8th when we were recording this. We're still in November. But how confusing is that going to be? It's almost like the who's on first thing, because somebody says, oh, I saw the Lamborghini Countach and Wolf of Wall Street sold. Well, actually, no, it didn't. Well, how do you know that? Well, I checked the website. Well, when you check the website, did you also notice that there's the second one? These are called hero cars in movie talk. The second hero car from the Wolf of Wall Street is going up for sale right now. So that's pretty amazing in terms of the two cars both being sold at the same time. Kind of hilarity of the whole thing to me.
So I noticed the second Wolf of Wall Street Countach, another white one that has not crashed, the one that's going up for sale in a week. I do not see a price estimate for that. And my question for you, Dave, is if you have two that were in the movie, one was the iconic crash scene and is still crashed. The car is dented and everything. And then you have the second one, which is pristine and drivable. Which is worth more?
Well, here is the head scratcher of all time. Guess what the pre-sale estimate is on the non-wrecked car?
What?
$1.5 to $2 million. Same price.
Or same estimate.
They don't know. Same estimate. We don't know what it's going to sell for. But
okay, well, you as an appraiser, which one do you think is worth more?
Listen, I got to tell you, the car that's not wrecked is worth more. The car that is is wrecked.
In the world. Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
But the car that is wrecked is more interesting.
Yeah, but it's
but interest doesn't equate to value, right? I mean, hopefully you can get in the one that's being sold that's not the wrecked car. Hopefully you can get in it and drive it down Wall Street because it's being sold in New York City, and have your pictures taken, in all the Wolf of Wall Street poses. So get that unconstructed. What is it? What's the material? Come on, help me out here. Linen jacket, and wear it around just like everybody did in the 80s.
Okay, so this is super. I mean, it's just hard for a regular person to a really good 25th anniversary Countach is what, 700,000-800,000, right?
I will say, time to get in price guide mode. Lamborghini Countaches have been climbing on an almost weekly basis. So yeah, they're approaching $1 million, but not there. How's that?
Okay. So then you add on the movie history to this uncrashed one, and you could see a 50% increase, which we've done a lot of stories about the celebrity value on a car on Hagerty media. And it really kind of works out to about 20%. So this looks to me like pretty optimistic price, but who knows?
The other thing you can do is just find another white one and take it to Cars and Coffee and say, yeah, it's the car from Wolf of Wall Street, as far as I know. And unless some guy's there, copying down the VIN number and, does a search on it and is going to call BS on you next week when you bring it, who the hell cares?
You wouldn't do that, would you, Dave?
All the time, man. Like, totally. I take total advantage of it. I would definitely do that.
The other thing that cracks me up about this
I would never do that.
Would you like, especially during this time in the 80s, how many fake Countaches there were with Countach bodies on Fieros? Like, they couldn't have crashed one of those. I mean, nobody would have known.
Well, the funny thing is that's what they used to do. They, for the movie Tucker, for example, they made dozens of fiberglass Tuckers, and they put them on old school bodies, so they'd have kind of they'd take I don't remember what they took. I think maybe it was Buicks or something like that, and made them into Tuckers, and that was kind of just let's kind of call it a cheaper, but also kind of a more acceptable thing to do than wreck an actual Tucker. At this point, though, these were maybe, I don't know, $125,000, $150,000 cars when this movie was made. So when you think about it, making a fake one, even though there were the Fiero ones out there, you might get laughed out of theaters by car people if they saw it as a Fiero being wrecked. So maybe that was the standard they were looking for. Hey, it's Martin Scorsese.
I know. I think it's Martin Scorsese. He got everything he wanted.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And the producers didn't have the backbone to say, like, look, we're just going to crash a Fiero. Nobody will know. Just shoot around
well, now it'll all be done with CGI, right? They just take a billion photos of the things. They'd make it into they take all the little, the little points on it, and they'd make it into a CGI Lamborghini Countach and do it that way.
Right.
So even better, nothing gets harmed except for computer pixels.
Right. Well, okay. Super. I mean, it's one of the, the people buying these are emotional beings. I think that's always the lesson whenever you and I speak about this. So it's always hard to predict exactly how humans are behave. Not always rational, especially our desires and our likes are not. So that's why we have these sort of weird anomalies like these Countaches. But, a lot of cars continue to sell, and we've got a great list up. So, Dave, what's the first one in our opening bid segment? What's sold lately that you really liked?
How about on Hagerty Marketplace? We've got a 95 Impala SS that's got some Lingenfelter modifications to it, which is never a bad thing in terms of the performance department. 28,000 views on Hagerty Marketplace, and it sold for almost $1 per view. It sold for $27,800, and this was a cool car. As far as I'm concerned, and it was worth every bit of that bid. Neat car.
Yeah, totally neat car. I mean, during this time, you had the Impala SS, which was a hot rod version of basically a taxi cab, and then Mercury did it with the Marauder, and it was just a kind of a, I don't know, would you call it like a Blues Brothers renaissance?
Yeah, there was I think more police car than taxi cab.
Yeah,
so
okay,
I think
police car.
We're on the same page, but something fleet. How about that?
Something fleet.
But they took this fleet car, and I think everybody bought theirs in black so they could look like an unmarked car coming down the road behind you, I guess, until they blew by you. But anyhow, this one, obviously. This is big money for this type of car. You can buy a kind of a, shall we just say, much less well cared for version for almost half this if you go. But I think this car did very, very well. Like I said, had a lot of views on Marketplace.
Yeah.
This is the second year of the SS, black with gray. Lingenfelter 383 cubic inch LT1 engine package installed in '96 by Lingenfelter in Detroit. We all know that's really not Detroit. What is that? It's no. It's Lincolnia, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I know. Hey, you're an Ann Arbor guy. You're supposed to know this stuff.
Well, a couple things struck out about me about this car. I really like it. That motor and powertrain package. Plus, it's got 410 gears. So this thing is going to light up the tires in the bottom 3 gears, no problem. Which just on its own, super fun. And this generation GM sedan was the last, like the big body on frame, rear wheel drive sedans. So super cool on all those cars. And the price for this was more remarkable because there's a fair amount of sun damage in the paint. I'm sure you noticed.
Yeah, it's got some clear coat that's missing on it.
Clear coat that's peeling. So that is not a cheap thing to fix, as you well know. And you can get a decent one of these for around 20. And as cool as it is, as cool as the powertrain is, you still have like a mid 90s bread and butter General Motors interior, which is, I mean, I'll put it nicely.
Yes, Larry, what are we going to say about that?
You don't feel like you're rolling heavy when you're sitting in this thing, right? You feel like you're rolling poor.
No, and you definitely, it is the same smell that you got from that last cop car you were in, or that last taxi cab, because that vinyl and that that stuff just did not age all that well. And by 95, it was pretty much the same damn gray leather that they used in 85 and probably everywhere. 75 and probably 65 if they had gray leather then.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I mean, this is such an outlier too, because usually what I've heard from you and the other people in the valuations, when you modify a car, expect that to decrease the value. And
yeah, but this is name brand, man.
And well, okay, maybe Lingenfelter has a name brand, maybe it doesn't, but the modifications here were done, let's say, I don't know what the right word is, properly, or something we'd all would do. So it actually increased the value of the car. And, super cool. I mean, obviously, just like you said, the 28,500 people viewed this listing. So there was a lot of action and a lot of excitement about it. And another like super crazy, fun, exciting car for not a lot of money, right?
Yeah. You want to talk about a lot of car for not a lot of money? Look at what's coming up next, man.
What is up next?
A 2002 Caddy El Dorado. They called this the ETC, not to be confused with the Cadillac El Dorado, etc. At Cars and Bids for $6,400. It's red. It's been in Texas since new.
It's got a North Star.
56,000 miles. No one's perfect, right?
No, I like the North Star. You don't?
Oh, I do too, but everybody always tells me about their, problems with North Star engines. It goes in one ear and out the other. I hear about the turbos on my Power Stroke Ford. I mean, whatever. Yeah, yes, it's going to have some issues come up at some point in time, but it's got 56,000 miles. If it was well cared for, you're probably fine. This is number 565 of 1,596 collector series models. Now, I love it when they call them collector series because I don't know who is, the intended collector. This baby's red with red and black interior. I love this thing for $6,400. This is the one you should buy for your nephew. You should have.
I was just thinking that I should have bought this for my nephew.
I know.
It's a screaming deal.
Such a cruiser.
Screaming deal. I mean,
I rented one of these, if you can believe it.
I had a
national rental in Pittsburgh, and but they were like out of cars, and they gave me like a triple upgrade. I'm expecting a Datsun, whatever, and I don't mean Nissan.
So you got upgraded to a Cadillac at the rental car fleet in 2002. Yeah. This is when Big Papa was born. This is when you're like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to live, right?
The birth of Big Papa. You're exactly right. 2002, the light comes on. I get out of the airplane, start walking. The music in the background, I think it's everything. The Bee Gees. I'm pretty sure it's the Bee Gees, whatever. Even though it's a decade late, maybe a decade and a half.
Yeah, I could see it.
I could tell, by the way, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, exactly. So, hey, this car's cheap, $6,400. Like I said, on Cars and Bids. This is my favorite car in Cars and Bids in the last 2 months, I think, and I love a lot of the cars there. So,
I mean, it's just like fun. That RX-8 that sold on the Hagerty marketplace not too long ago. That was a screaming deal under 10 grand. The thing we didn't speak about. This is a two-door version of really the STS sedan, which. I mean, this is when the late 90s when Cadillac says, hey, man, we got to really get out of our pimp daddy image and modernize. And that car was gorgeous today. This design
I
is
agree.
gorgeous.
I think this car is like one of those things that's going to end up the design will end up in a museum
Oh, yeah.
somewhere as some part of some part of high point of GM design.
I agree.
I couldn't agree more.
And especially the interior. I mean, if you look at the classic simple lines of the dash on these, it's shallow, it's low, it's really comfortable, and yeah, it's not a BMW M5, not even close, but you could go cross country effortlessly in this thing and get out of it like just totally fresh. I mean, the air conditioning worked really well, great seats, all that stuff. So $6,400. Oh my gosh!
And it doesn't look like 2002 to me. I think this car was so far ahead of its time. It looks more like a 2012 type of car. So it's got a lot going for it. It's kind of monochrome, so it's got that kind of dipped 80s look, even though it's the 2000s by now.
Right.
But I love the interior too. Black leather with red accents, and these are not little tiny lines. These are big fat red accent lines.
Yeah.
I love them.
The funny thing about this era, this was like what I remember is you still had the old GM firmly entrenched in a lot of unfortunate areas. And what I mean by that is like, okay, by now, Honda had shown up 20, 30 years ago with all the controls felt like they're on roller bearings, whether they were or they weren't. The turn signals, the shifters, everything.
Good way to put it.
Right?
Yeah.
Even in 2002, this thing had a mushy brake pedal of a 1975 Impala. And it has a big shifter, an automatic shifter on the center console. And when you shift it, you feel like you're dragging it through, let's say, two sides of a plastic sheet, right? You have an annoying click of the turd seals. It was like they were so close in a lot of areas, but then these things that you touched every day they just felt as cheap as on the cheapest Chevy. And I think that's what hurt this car. That's a theory I have.
Yeah, I think you're right with that, and I think that they've learned a lot from that. I think all the manufacturers have that.
Yeah.
The kind of, what do they call them, tactile, touch points and
Right.
all that sort of stuff are very, very important to people. And when you get in a Cadillac, it should feel like a Cadillac, look like a Cadillac, smell like a Cadillac, perform like a Cadillac. And I think they were missing that one part of that, which was have the touch of a Cadillac, because that was missing in that era.
I'm going to ask you again, when you see stuff like this, just call me. Let me bid on it.
Okay.
And my nephew
I know,
needs a
but
car.
I see them after they're sold so many times. Well, we got some coming up. They're still for sale. Maybe there's one for your nephew. In
okay. This next one I want to talk about because people have been pinging me with cars like this time and time again. And it's a 1989 Mercedes-Benz 560 SEC AMG 6.0. with the wide body kit. Okay, Wolf of Wall Street, everybody thinks was the Countach. It really wasn't. It was the Mercedes-Benz 560 modified by pick your tuner house here, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And there were a lot of them back then, but AMC's kind of AMC's the champion.
AMG.
They're the survivor. Yeah, they're the survivor.
Yeah.
There were a whole bunch of people who modified cars back then, but AMG was the one to bet your horse on or bet your horse race money on, and they're the winner. This car, I love it. There's another one coming up, incredibly similar, coming up for auction soon, with much less miles. This car, let's see, what were the miles on this thing? I'll find them here. But in the meantime, there's a world
miles.
Beater coming up. Yeah.
Well, what I really like about these, the AMG versions, so they got a big 6-liter double overhead cam V8 that had a ton of power. It's the same motor that was in the AMG Hammer that went well over 150 miles an hour. So it had legit performance cred. And then the wide body, what I remember of the era was you had two camps. This was a pretty tasteful wide body, sort of like a M3 from the era, just flared out fenders, versus the Koenigs and the other ones were just like cartoons. They were so
exactly.
So this was like a car you could actually use.
They put strakes on like on a Testarossa and stuff like that. And you're right. And this is also on a 560. So, I mean, it's a luxury car all the way through that happens to be a performance car as well. So
this is just like the Cadillac we were just looking at, Dave.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of a difference in price.
What's the price difference?
Probably going to pay about twice what the Cadillac cost in taxes on this car. This car sold for $417,500. Now, you and I, I'm got a couple years on you, I'm going to admit it.
Wow.
But you and I both remember going and visiting German car repair shops, and in the back or maybe outside under a cover, there'd always be an AMG car.
Was
There'd
there?
always be an AMG car. There was always there, and it was not worth fixing. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
Boy, has that trend changed, huh?
I mean, it has they call this era the 80s, this Radwood era, right? Because, rad, everything's rad. And I am not a big fan of that word, but if you look at this car in particular has every visual touch point from the era that we all saw in the car magazines. Number one, those Recaro seats with the adjustment on the right thigh bolster. Right, it has the
Recaro Type C seats.
Type
and
C.
Ask me how I know. I have a car with them.
Okay, and it has the the steering wheel that looks like you bought it out of the back of a car magazine. I don't see the integrated K4 radar detector. K40 radar detector. That has to be somewhere.
Well, that's because it's hidden.
It's hidden.
The guy was driving through Virginia one time and decided to hide it. So
Right.
That's my explanation.
Everything blacked out, not a shine on it except for the rims. Right. So it really ticks that 80 style, which, just like everything. And now that I'm over 50, I learned everything comes back. I mean, if the 70s bell bottoms come back, that means anything's going to come back. And here
Absolutely.
we are.
No. I mean, and you could still drive this car with some degree of irony. I can't. If I drive a car from the 80s that's kind of, like a high fashion car from the 80s, everybody looks at me and goes, "Oh, poor guy. He's still stuck in the 80s."
Yeah. For me, it could be like, well, no, this is a dream car. When I make it, I'm getting an AMG. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I like it.
But this price is
$417.
It's
Larry.
I am as much as we talked about the market softening, good time to buy. This just seems like holy cow, crazy money.
Hey, let's do the math real quick. How many of these El Dorados could we buy for 400? All of them is the answer, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this is something you've been talking about for a while, though. As the generation gets old, as Gen Xers come into money, and we're in the middle of the biggest wealth transfer in the history of this country, right? And so,
us boomers are dying fast, man. Get in line.
I can't, Dave. I appreciate being in your will. It's very generous of you. I know you have no kids. I'm looking for the proper consideration, but so that's really what's kind of fueling a lot of the price rise in these specialty cars. And the other thing, how many of these seats were really made legit from AMG in 1989? What, 20? Not that many.
Here's the interesting thing. You have to check it, and you have to take an expert along with you to check it out. But this car, I think, has been fully vetted because it has the AMG, the serial numbers on the fenders and things like that. Because, you could also buy a plastic body kit for your car that looked an awful lot similar. Right. So you have to be very careful.
Well, I hope that buyer obviously is very excited about it because they bid it up. This was an auction, so let's hope they enjoy it. What's the next car that's on the past sale list? It's interesting, Dave.
Let's go back to cars and bids for a Mustang that you and I probably should have bought anyway. 2011 Ford Mustang GT Roush, a 5XR with 25,000 miles. It does have the 6-speed.
Yeah.
It's number 113 of 136 produced in 2011. Sold for $26,500. That sounds like an awful lot of money for a Mustang, and it kind of is. But you know what the MSRP on this car was when it was new?
Probably $65,000.
$56,480. Yeah. So your dyslexia comes into play again, right? You thought it was 65 and it's 56. I hate that. It happens to me all the time.
It takes me down and I laugh. I love it, Dave. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad there's a few miles between us all the time because that way my nose doesn't get punched and I don't have to throw the punch either. So anyhow, good looking car. It's got that Kona blue, which is a great color, charcoal black interior. It's a Texas title. I think the car's got a one owner too, if I'm not mistaken. It's a great car, and you're buying it basically for half price of the guy who bought it new. He put $25,000 on it. You've got another $125,000 you can put on it if you want.
This is really interesting because the car of this the 2011 2012 Mustang, the one you want is the Boss 302, and it's on my bucket list. They are incredible cars. They sound wild. They've got great chassis, beautiful shifter. Fantastic. They have, I think, around 450 horsepower. So this one, you get the motor, you get a blower, a supercharger with 525 horsepower. You get the Roush name, which I think back in the day when he was really actively involved in racing, had a lot of cachet to it. Today, We could argue back and forth. I don't know. However, you got this car with more power for less money than if you went to buy a 302 right now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So bargain, bargain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a 2011. I like the style of these. The Ford Mustang the changes have been evolutionary instead of revolutionary. So, your mother-in-law won't know if it's a 2011 or 2023, but the Mustang guys sure will. So, but for 26.5, a great buy.
Great buy. A lot of fun. I mean, just think about I just sold my 86 Fox body, my 86 GT. On the Hagerty marketplace, it bid up to $15,250 and sold. Now, It's a different thing, right? If you grew up in the 80s and you really wanted a Fox body, that experience is nowhere near what this is. But I mean, just think about all around better car, better speed, better air conditioning, all that stuff. This is, great buy. Great buy. Somebody was really smart here.
The next car coming up.
Yeah, sure.
Just want to let you know, I need your address because I've got to have it delivered to you. I bought it for you. Merry Christmas, Larry. There's a couple of provisions. Before you accept it, you have to agree to wear a captain's hat.
I got one.
Anytime you drive it.
Yeah, no problem.
And you have to also move to West Palm Beach or Naples, Florida.
And I have to have an ascot around my neck.
An ascot would be, that would be perfect. Exactly. Because it's a 1998 Mercedes-Benz SL 500. They're calling it a sport with 52,000 miles, sold for $31,000 on the MB market. Now, we've talked about this before. We've talked about this before. Yeah. You can pay way too much for one of these cars, way too much for an SL.
Yeah.
And you can pay a really decent price for an SL. And you really need to get into the car before you can find out exactly whether you did the right thing. This car actually looks pretty damn nice. 52,000 miles, like I said. Final year of the M119, and it's 2-owner car. Probably not my cup of tea, but I thought with the white and blue, we can call you Captain Larry when you drive it. What do you think?
I am down.
My gift?
I thought this was a really strong price for this car. Not that it's not worth it, but that they seem to trade for about 10 grand less. And, the thing was, most of these cars were parked in a garage their whole life. The 52,000 miles is really nice. That's low, but it's not really that uncommon with these. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was sort of like, oh, Dave, is this telling us something? Like the market is understanding that these cars they're undervalued a little bit.
Yeah, the good ones definitely are undervalued. There's a whole bunch of people now who are making their daily bread by selling these cars, finding nice ones, which is still easy to do.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit, a little bit harder every single day. But finding the nice ones and culling them out from the not nice ones is kind of a big deal that you have to do on these.
Yeah.
But like I said, you show me your permanent address in Naples, Florida, and I'm shipping it down to you. You got about 30 days. Okay?
That's where they all are. The last one, I'm really excited. This car has baffled me since it came out, and this price, I guess, doesn't surprise me. Although I still don't understand it. This is a 2004 Volkswagen R32, which was the top of the Volkswagen Golf. It had 4-wheel drive, a little more power, manual transmission. It's sort of the holy grail for GTI heads. And with only 710 miles, this car never got driven. It sold for $85,000. And I'm still a bit shocked. You're probably going to tell me I just don't know what I'm doing. This makes sense to you, doesn't it?
I'm kind of shocked as well. Okay, let's be honest. The line of Golfs that are getting ready to self-destruct, shall we just say, or self-destruct with the help of their ninth or 10th owner is a very, very long one. So this is probably a one of one, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many out there that have less miles or even anywhere near the type of miles this has.
No.
This is a lot of money, but I'm not going to give the new owner any crap about it. I think that they bought a real kind of a timepiece and put it away, or that was put away. I don't know whether they're going to drive it because every single mile that you take will take $1,000 off the price or something like that. Maybe not 1,000, but let's put it this way: if a car winds up with 4,800 miles, then it's one of a couple, maybe. So
it's just such a weird car. I mean, because it was when it was new, you had a standard GTI. You could get in this generation, you get the VR6 GTI. This was the generation that Volkswagen totally screwed up. They put in this U.S. only soft suspension, and the cars were just not good. And I was shocked that you would pay so much extra for an R32 model when the experience wasn't that much better than a regular GTI that was, I think, 10 or 15 grand cheaper. So that's where I was always a little bit of a head scratcher to these. But I think to a certain populace, these are, like I said, they love them.
Well, one of the comments in here struck me that you can buy a new R model with an MSRP of around 45 grand.
Yeah,
maybe that would be the better thing to buy. Maybe buy two of them for 90 and put one of them away. I mean, if you have that kind of coin, right? Because you could have fun with one and use the other as your investment vehicle, so to speak.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we all have we're like I just talked about at the meeting. We're not all rational when it comes to these things. So maybe I should just keep my mouth shut and just say I hope somebody really enjoys it. But it's just never been my cup of tea. The R32 has always felt like you were overpaying for. You just weren't getting enough something better experience wise from a GTI.
Every time I think about it, when somebody makes a comment like that, I always think about my daily driver, which is a 2021 F-150 Limited, which is the top of the line F-150. It had a list price of $87,000.
Yeah,
$87,000. And when you think about it, I could have gone to the same dealership and bought a same four-wheel drive Ford F-150 without all that content in it for 40 grand less. So, I guess I can't give this guy a hard time.
Dave, you worked hard. You deserve it. You want the chrome of that limited badge? Go for it. It cost you 10 grand. I'm happy for you, Dave.
Yeah, and it says limited up front. So everybody knows when they, in the rearview mirror, they read it and it goes, yeah, they can see that I got a limited. Okay. So that's important.
By the way, if I could assuage you, I just bought a Ram pickup and I did the opposite. I bought the base model.
Good.
And it was, I think I walked out there, it was like 42 grand. Great truck. I like the Rams better than the F-150s. But every time I get in it, I'm like, it doesn't even have automatic air conditioning. Like you have to turn the dial. I'm like, oh yeah, I got the cheap model, which I don't mind. It's funny.
I always say something about Silverado and F-150 owners. There's only one thing they can agree on.
What?
You know what that is, right?
1 minute, yeah.
Yeah, Ram owners are fools.
Absolutely wrong. We're the creative, independent thinkers, unlike you sheeples that just blindly buy this.
Don't stop believing, brother. Don't stop believing.
Okay, well, that was fun. Again, great time to buy. A lot of incredible bargains. I'm going to set a reminder on all of them for Cadillacs so I can get
the VW.
I mean, my nephew is going to be rolling in some 20-year-old Caddy. I mean, I see it already.
Yeah, I like that.
So let's move on to our next segment. This is Kicking Tires. These are cars that are currently for sale and will be closing soon. And you've highlighted one, a very special car that's right now on the Hagerty Marketplace auction site. Tell us about it.
It's an 87 Ferrari Testarossa with 3,400 miles, white with tan. Remember the white with tan thing?
Yeah.
It's currently at a bid of $96,000. The Hagerty Price Guide has these cars from currently, and I'm pretty sure this is going to go up, from 104 to 263.
Yeah.
And this is, like you said, on a Hagerty auction site right now. It is part of a celebrity collection. You know who the celebrity is?
I do. You tell us.
I'm going to grill you on this. There's your
That's
there's
so
your
bad.
hint.
No.
I know. Thank you. I thank you. Let's see. We're gonna have a slugfest if you can't figure this out. How's that?
Oh, you want me to guess, or you're turning the audience?
Yeah.
I know who it is. I want you to just tell us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's George Foreman. It's George Foreman.
Wait, the grill guy, the boxer guy, right?
Yeah, same guy.
Yeah, see, that's why the miles are so low. He couldn't fit in this thing.
Actually, I think he probably could.
He's got
he has 1,000 miles on it since since he bought it. Yeah, he's a big guy, but you have to be in great shape. So you should be able to wiggle into a Testarossa. If I can wiggle myself into one, he can definitely do it. So 3,400 miles, currently 96,000. It's going to sell for more, but it's one worth checking out, and totally rad 80s, as we love to say.
So, I
Yeah.
remember the 80s Testarossa. The first ones that came out, I want to say in 86, right? They had a single rear view mirror that stuck far out from the A-pillar. And that's sort of an iconic car. This is a later one, which was just before they went to the 512 designation. But these cars have been on a wild valuation ride over the last decade. And I'm asking you to explain it, right? Because they sort of spiked 5 or 6 years ago, and then they came back down to earth. Am I talking? What am I saying here?
Yeah, that's pretty much right. The low point, and I can document this because it was an actual auction. I went to an auction in London, which is where I am right now, interestingly enough, down at Vauxhall, and it was a bottom sale, and there was a Testarossa, an '87. I think we got it in '87. I think you're right. '86 was the first year for the European cars, so it was probably an '86 Testarossa that was for sale and sold for £36,000, and all of the value in the car was in the number plate. The license plates in the UK, they're very expensive, and it had a, as they say, cherished number plate on it. The car was a 10,000 pound throwaway at that point. So that's the low point. And you're right, they did go up. They went back down. They're probably going to keep going up again for a while. What happened was more of them entered into the marketplace. When that happens, people say, well, I can only get 86 grand for it, so I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to wait till I get 120. So when they become, $120,000 cars, then people start to put them on the marketplace again. And that's what happens. This car, I like the celebrity ownership. I don't think the George Foreman stuff adds a ton of value to it. It becomes more interesting than it is valuable. But I love the fact that George Foreman, kind of seen as as an interesting and good guy. What, he has 5 kids named George, something like that. I mean, this is kind of an unusual guy that way. But anyhow,
I just like Testarossas.
More power to him.
Of this era. It was right around. This was one of the last cars that Enzo was involved in, right? Because he passed in '88, and so this was certainly developed under his watchful eye. It has a really unique engine that Ferrari didn't make for long, and it was just from the Boxer that came before the Testarossa, and then this car, and then it went away. It's a flat 12 engine in the back of behind the seats.
You realize the funny line that you just fed me, right? It's a Boxer engine, and you're buying it from a Boxer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just slow. I'm just slow. I didn't pick up on that. So good for you for owning that. But that's one of the things I really like. They sound incredible, and they really had really decent punch to them. So it's not like one of those cars you buy, like, oh, I'm buying a Ferrari. Like, I have that 3-way GT4. It thing's slow. This car really has some beans. And as you say, it looks really wild. It was meant to be used. The thing you always have to wonder about these Ferraris, I think catches people off guard, is the seating position is really weird, right?
Yes, it is. Very, very Italian. You have to have your legs all the way out and your arms all the way out.
Yeah.
And you better have long arms to drive this car.
Yeah, it's built for people with really short legs and long arms, and it's manual steering. So it's kind of stiff, especially around parking lots and things like that. But otherwise...
No, you have people park it for you, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean you. I'm talking about you. No, you have people park your car. Well, you have your kid. He'll park it for you, right? Yeah, he'll park it for me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How much did you spend on paint on your 308, by the way? Is that a matter of public record?
Oh, yeah, I put it on social media. So I just got the paint, and it was that included the paint, the clear, and any of the thinning stuff was $2,500 total. And that's a gallon.
So
of paint.
Pretty much a third the price of that El Dorado that we should have bought, huh?
Yes.
Gotta have perspective, brother. Gotta have perspective.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this thing trades. It's already $100,000 is pretty strong money this close into the auction. So I think definitely going to be watching that. I think we should. The next one you had was that we already talked about was the 25th anniversary Countach that's going to be for sale. But let's drop right to the next one, which is a super strange car, and I want you to explain what it is because I'm not really sure.
Okay, so. You realize BMW's had a very, very long series of art cars. It started with people like Andy Warhol did an art car for
What
BMW.
is an art car?
Now, okay, so they hired artists to paint the cars, sometimes when they were race cars, sometimes when they were brand new, but they've decided to do it with brand new cars that they sell pretty much to the public with an asterisk on it that says you better be a big time BMW buyer to be in line for something like this.
Yeah.
This one is owned by, and I'm just going to spell it out. You know the guy, Michael Fux. So we call him Fuchs, but we have to do that when we're talking social media here.
Wow.
The Mattress King of Miami, if you're wondering who that is.
Mattress is a good business,
Yeah, he buys. Well, they can catch people sleeping on it. Now you shouldn't have interrupted me. So anyhow, this is one of Michael's cars. He's famous for having, I believe, 4 of his own paint colors. From Rolls-Royce. He just was in the media for buying the new Rolls-Royce, whatever it is, their, SUV / CUV, whatever it is. I don't even know. That's 300 and some odd thousand. He bought one because he's custom ordering one in his own colors, but it wasn't ready to be one of the first. So they sold him the first. But anyhow, old Michael commissioned this car. It's going to be at Mecum Kissimmee. And I hate saying this because Mecum Kissimmee seems like such a long way away. It's January. We're almost in December right now.
6 weeks away.
So it's not all that long away. So Michael has put this car, Mr. Fuchs has put this car into the sale. It's one of 99 8Xs, they're calling Jeff Koons, which is the artist, special editions, and each one is different. I love the color scheme in this. It is out freaking rageous to the nth degree. Car's got 53 miles on it. The current MSRP of this car is $359.95. It is based on an M850i, 4.4 liter twin turbo V8, so it's got some punch to it.
Fast car.
But I don't know what the hell's this car worth? I got no idea. Do you?
I was just going to say, I have nothing to add here. It's got the craziest comic book paint job I've ever seen. Like, I don't know.
That's the whole idea. It's definitely comic book.
I mean, somebody's got the stones to roll up somewhere in this thing. I don't. So
graphic novel.
It's really hard to imagine what this is going to trade for. I guess we'll find out. That's why I'm glad it's going to be at an auction.
Could you imagine driving this around and like maybe like trying to do something on the sly, like go to the liquor store in the middle of the day or something like that?
I'm just gonna buy some smokes. My wife won't see me.
There's going to be a record of of cell phone photos of this car going up and down wherever you drive it for as long as you drive it, because it is a kind of an oddball looker, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I like it.
I mean, this is one of those things. The right people have to be in the room to bid this up, and that's probably a musical artist, somebody that really appreciates something like this.
Yeah, Deadmau5 has got his Ford GT, so he's kind of out of the market. We'll have to wait and see who it is. So yeah.
So let's move on to the next one. This is a little more up my something that I really like. It's a 2018 Ferrari 48 Challenge car. It's on the Hagerty marketplace. These cars, these are factory built race cars, and that is a subtle but really important difference from someone else who will take like a Ferrari 48 street car, send it to a shop, and they install a roll cage and all that stuff. When it comes from the factory, it's all built in as the car is being manufactured, so you get a much better integrated experience. I mean, and they depreciate really fast. So these things, I think, are pretty cool bargains, if you ask me. I mean, it's for sale for $210,000. What did you want to add about it?
3.9 liter turbo V8. This car has 2 podium finishes in the Challenge Series in the U.S. and 2 podiums in Europe. Yeah. So it's got 4 wins under its belt. And you're right, when they get played out and used up, they get very, very cheap. This car is not played out and not used up. It's 57, 67 miles. But at some point you go, yeah, those miles were not exactly going down to the grocery store and back. They were definitely a little more tough miles. But, for somebody who wants to get into it, this is kind of the price of entry. This is one of those things where, if you start flying airplanes and then you decide to buy an airplane, you're probably going to spend that kind of money, that $210,000 to get your first one. You don't probably want the one that's $66,000. You want to have a good one that has been competitive, because you could probably make it competitive again if you're a good driver. If you're not a good driver that needs to learn some issues, you're better off getting a used one than a new one. So I think that's probably what the potential buyer is for this.
Yeah.
Kind of an oddball car. The challenge cars are, but you're right. They were factory built for street, but also for racing, and mostly for racing. So don't look for the air conditioning button. Don't look for the stereo button.
I have a Porsche version of this. It's a 2008 Porsche 911 GT3 Cup.
Right.
And it's basically the race car version that Porsche sold through Porsche Motorsports. They're stupid cheap. I mean, they made almost 1,000 of them. You can get a really good one for $80,000, and it has a 450 horsepower engine that revs to, I think it revs to 8,500. Howls. It's got a sequential gearbox with a big stick that you pull. A absolute thrilling machine to drive, but like any race car, the upkeep is terrifying. What everybody tells me is that once you get 100 hours on the motor, you're looking at a $40,000 rebuild for it. And that's just a rebuild. That's not a new engine. So the upkeep's really high. But on the flip side, they do so many things at the factory that make it easier to own as a race car. I'll just give you one example is, where a suspension bolts to the frame of a street car, you have something called a bushing that usually has some sort of rubber element in it to isolate it, make it a little more refined. Well, on a race car, you don't care about that. You just want a solid mount, one that's easy to maintain. So my Porsche has all spherical bearings, so they're hard mounted to the frame, and that's some little things like that just make maintenance and owning it a whole bunch easier. And there's all kinds of little tricks to a car like this. So, this 288, I mean, you're going to be the fastest thing at any track day. And
488.
48, sorry, like a 48. So it's quite a cool car. The downside is, like, same thing with my Porsche. If I wreck it really hard and I bend the tub, because they're unibody cars, it's pretty much a write-off.
Well, the interesting thing is, we can discuss this because you know how to make become a millionaire in the challenge racing business, right? Start with $3 million.
Yes, right.
Spend the $2 million, you're back down to $1 million. Yeah. That's how you do it. That's how you become a millionaire.
Totally. That's the way you do it. So fun car. I mean, race cars depreciate, and then at some point, if they were fancy enough, they appreciate. And then, so we'll see where this goes. There's one more car that you've highlighted, and it's again a 180 from this Ferrari just talking about. Why don't you explain what you're talking about here?
How about a 2007 Mitsubishi Eclipse convertible? Now, you never see these cars anymore. You used to see them every once in a while. I picked this one, Larry, because it's in Holland, Michigan. So it's not too far for you, not even a day drive there and back to buy it.
Right near Lake Michigan.
Yeah, and it's so it's already been registered in Michigan, so none of the problems. Bring it in the state and all that sort of stuff. Just go to the title clerk, get it done. Whatever. Yeah. $8,000. It's got some miles on it. It's got 158,000 miles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, black. It's yours. I mean, you definitely need this car.
Yeah, it's another one of those super fun, a lot of fun for the money. I mean, $8,000. And
if you keep this thing long enough, you'll get your money back. I mean, it's already got 157,000 miles. Not a guarantee, just my thought.
You think so?
But keep it nice. Yeah, keep it nice. It said it's a summer-driven car, so it's not a wintertime beater. 5-speed manual transmission, ready to go. It looks like. A couple cars here on the Hagerty marketplace. This one's a little more affordable than the last one on the marketplace at $210. So at $8,000, you should think about this one.
Dave, I think that's a great way to end it. You've really brought us a kaleidoscope of available automobiles. And, I think what we also learned, even though we still believe it's a great time to buy, the market is just becoming rational. There's still some areas where it's pretty crazy, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be that way. There's always
Yeah.
going to be dreamers. There's always going to be people who get big money. There's always going to be people who ask big money and people who pay big money. That's the way the market goes. And a lot of times, the joke's on us sometimes, Larry. We're sitting here laughing about somebody paying $1.5 million for a Wolf of Wall Street car. Back, someday when the museum opens up and the guy's got both of them, that he paid, $3.5 million for the pair of them.
Yeah.
And he's charging people $10 to take a look at them. The laugh's definitely on him and not on us. So we don't know. I mean, we're just taking a guess.
There you go. You got anything else you want to add before we sign off, Dave?
No, I think it's a good time to basically review what's good for you and what's not. It's a great time to think about selling something that you don't need anymore. I see a lot of people putting some collections of things on, especially the automobilia stuff that doesn't mean anything to them anymore. Talked to a guy recently selling some of his signs. I sold some of my signs this year.
Oh.
It's time to wintertime's time to take a good look at that stuff and and think about whether you really want to have it and whether you want to leave it for your kid who doesn't care, or whether you want to sell it now and turn it into cash and take a vacation.
That's a good point. Don't be a prisoner to your stuff.
Exactly. Good way to put it.
Good way to end it, Dave. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you next time on No Reserve.
Thanks much.